Prospect Dugout. You can also listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you're wondering why right now, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, why I have a beanie on, it's a little bit of celebration because 2 days ago it was snowing in the Northeast. So I wanted to let all of you know, if you didn't, that you can go buy Prospect Dugout merchandise, including this beanie, on thedugout.store. So head to thedugout.store and get all of your Prospect Dugout merchandise, including this beanie, sweatshirts, t-shirts. We have it all. So head over there and check it out and cop some merch. So we can review. Yesterday we were off from our masterminds, honoring Mother's Day. We thought it was better served that you guys spend time with your families and your mamas rather than listening to us talk about baseball. But last week we had another episode. It was episode 2 of Kicking It with Swish, which was awesome. Nick Swisher every single Tuesday night at 6 p.m. comes on and talks baseball, talks life, talks really anything you want with you, the Prospect Dugout community. So if you want to join Nick Swisher and us live on Kicking It with Your Boy Swish every Tuesday night at 6 p.m., please do so. And you can also submit a question at prospectdugout.tv. So, some news dropped this week. Not a lot of baseball stuff going on, but news is dropping, which is great because it gives us something to talk about here on the Cup of Coffee podcast.
I love news.
The news that dropped, and we're going to go into detail. And this is the topic that we're going to spend this podcast on, is the 2020 MLB draft will be limited to 5 rounds. This obviously led to an explosion on Twitter of people
Freaking out.
just complaining is what it breaks down to. Here's the breakdown. Each team will draft 5 rounds, which is roughly 150 players, give or take, depending on if they have like a compensation round. And then pretty much the rest is just free game with a max amount of $20,000 being allowed for players that are undrafted. So a team, if you go undrafted, the max amount that a team can offer you is $20 grand. I'm not sure why people are complaining about this.
So 30 players per round?
Roughly, yeah. I don't really know why people are complaining about this. I see more upside than not. What do you think?
I mean, when I first heard it, I was like, dang. But then, as I was thinking about it, like, the draft wasn't always how it currently is or was last year. It was different. There used to be 2 drafts, right? There used to be a regular draft and then an early draft. Remember Cash Beecham? He got drafted in that
long time ago.
Yeah, but there was a different draft.
There was like a summer and a winter draft.
And he got drafted in the other one. So I think, this is just another thing where it's like there's something new that's happening that people are being forced to do. It's not like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's try this. Let's do this. It's literally, there's no choice in the matter. Decisions are being made because of outside circumstances. So baseball shut down because of COVID-19. Stores shut down because of COVID-19. People going crazy with masks and things like that. COVID-19. Everything is happening because of that. So this is just another scenario where I feel like I mean, the way that it sounds, I mean, yeah, but if you think about it, a lot of people get drafted 20th, 30th round and don't really do anything. Like they hang around for a year or two or just take up space or get released. Like this is going to make minor league baseball better. It's going to possibly make these athletes better if they're forced to go to college now. You're gonna make college baseball better. Now all of a sudden all these 18-year-olds that maybe are a little bit more talented, but they're gonna go straight to a rookie league or something like that, and they're not gonna be able to, do well. And it's not worth the pick, or it's not worth the free agent money. Now they go to college and they develop for 3 years. I mean, look at the NBA. The NBA did it. You used to get drafted out of high school, and now all of a sudden you have to go to college a year, right? So, I mean, Kobe came up when he was 17, 18, dominated right away. But it's an exception to the rule. Not everybody can do that. So,
right.
I mean,
that was definitely the exception to the rule. I mean, I think if you break it down, like the reality is that this is going to make college baseball better because it's going to force that fringe high school player that gets drafted in the 25th round and gets $50,000. And the fact is that $50,000 isn't life-changing money. Like it is when you're 17, 18 years old, you think 50 grand, but then the reality is you got to pay Uncle Sam. So by the time you actually get,
depending on where you're at too, especially if you're like in California, you got to pay the state Uncle Sam, and you got to pay the federal Uncle Sam. So
basically you might be walking away if you're signing for 50 grand with $30,000, which is going to get eaten up in no time. I think the bigger picture is that this is just giving people an opportunity to, use this as an excuse. So I went and dived a little bit deeper and said, okay, let's look at major league rosters. Okay, let's look at major league rosters and see the breakdown of active major league rosters where have guys gotten drafted.
Okay.
So I got 3 teams. Like Braves, worst team, fringe team, championship caliber team. And they're all broken down.
Marlins, Braves, and Yankees.
So I got Baltimore. I'm going to read you these stats. I'm going to read you the stats of all 3 teams, and then let's talk about it. So Baltimore. Pitchers on their squad. They have 4 pitchers that were drafted in the first 5 rounds out of high school, 0 that were drafted 6 through 10, and 0 that were drafted after. From college, they have 2 pitchers that were drafted in the first 5 rounds, 4 that were drafted in 6 through 10, and then 5 10 and after. And then they have 2 international position players. High school, 3 of their active roster was drafted in the first 5 rounds. 1 was drafted 6 through 10, 0 after. High school, first 5 rounds, 4. 6 through 10, 2. After, 0. International, 5. That's arguably one of the worst teams in baseball. Okay, so if you, this is the argument where like, oh, like I got drafted in the 20th round by the Orioles, I got an opportunity. Okay. Now let's look at a team that's very much like draft focused and building up their players. So look at the Cubs. Okay. That's a middle of the line major league club, I would say. Okay. So
been around a while.
Right.
Couple years.
So their pitchers that were drafted out of high school in the top 5 rounds, there's 4 on their big league staff. Out of high school, rounds 6 through 10, 0. After, 2, which is interesting. Their pitchers out of college, first 5 rounds, 1. 6 through 10, 4 after 4. 2 international guys. Okay. Position players, high school, first 5 rounds, 4. 6 through 10, 1. After, 0. College players drafted, first 5 rounds, 6. 6 through 10 rounds, 0. After, 1 international guy. So, like,
that's just
it was a little eye-opening.
Right?
Yeah, this is a 25-man roster.
Okay.
So, a little bit interesting to me. And I broke it up into pitchers and position players because there's definitely an advantage for pitchers, right? And I think you can see in just these 2 teams, first of all, the blaring opportunity that you have as a pitcher to make it just coming right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, out of all these stats, the bulk of players on a big league roster got drafted out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that it was a 4-year college. Some of these guys are community college guys or whatever, but they went and made that jump and developed. So last team, let's break it down. World Series contender, Houston Astros, right? Pitchers out of high school on their big league roster, drafted in the first 5 rounds, 2. Out of high school, 6 rounds, 6 through 10, 0, and after 1, which is a rarity. College, rounds 1 through 5, 3. Rounds 6 through 10, 1. After 4. They got 5 international guys. Position players, out of high school, round 1 through 5, 1 player. That's Carlos Correa. 6 through 10, 1. After, 0. College, rounds 1 through 5, 4. Rounds 6 through 10, 0. After the 10th round, 4 players on their big league roster, and they have 4 international guys. So, interesting stats for sure. I think this is 3 teams out of 30, and I think if you went through all 30, you would see very much similar across the board because these are pretty similar for the most part, especially on the position player side. Like, if you're a position player and you're complaining, you're in high school and you're complaining about the draft being knocked down to 5 rounds, like, your chances of making it to the big leagues were none to begin with. Like, less than 1% of 1% chance. I mean, if you think about it, let's just go back into the year 2000. Since the year 2000, okay, the draft was 50 rounds up until 2012. Okay, after that, it dropped down to 40 rounds.
Oh, 40. Okay.
40. So roughly in the last 20 years, 45,000 players have been drafted. 45,000 players have been drafted. Do you want to take a guess? Since the National League, basically, they're keeping record of this. Since 1876, guess how many players have been able to call themselves a big leaguer?
Since what year?
1876.
Less than 10,000.
Close. More than that.
12,500.
19,492. No, it's not close. But
thanks. You're almost there.
Almost there.
10,000 away. Sorry.
But so, like, let's just put that in perspective.
Yeah.
Like, 45,000 players have just been drafted in the last 20 years. And over, what is that?
How many in the last 20 years?
45,000. Right?
Wow.
If you take 30 teams times whatever, 40 rounds times 20 years, you're getting into 45,000 players that have been drafted. So for people to use Major League Baseball doesn't care about the players, I have a hard time hearing or letting you cry on my shoulder.
How can they not care about the players? They have to.
I feel like that's really all about the players, because now you're just saying, hey, like,
you're not wasting somebody's time.
I'm not wasting your time. I don't want you to have this illusion of making it to the big leagues that's not there. Like, you should, as a high school player, college player, when you get drafted, think you're going to make it to the big leagues. That's what wakes you up every day. Yeah. That's what gets you going. That's what makes you work harder than the next guy.
You can't not have that dream. You can't not have it. Just because something is such a small chance of success doesn't mean you can't have that dream, but you have to be aware of the reality. I mean, we're just talking about a situation here.
No doubt about it. But what I hate to see, and I've seen it, and it's probably happened more times than I've even seen it, is that you get a kid that gets out of high school, not really a big-time student, has this illusion that he, maybe he's from a small town or whatever, and he's a really good baseball player, and he's dominating in a small town or whatever, and gets drafted in the 20th round out of high school and gets $50, $60, $70,000, and he ain't ready to compete with the big boys because he hasn't matured. And we try to keep it real at Prospect Dugout. At $60,000, $70,000 out of high school in the 20th round, like, they might give you, especially a position player, like, you're gonna have maybe 3 to 4 years to prove yourself. And by that time,
that's a lot.
At 4 years, if you're 22 years old and you're not in AA or AAA, like, you're getting replaced.
Yeah,
and
probably that guy that was just in college,
right? Like, you're 22 years old. You're broke because you've spent all your $50,000 because you didn't get a job in the off season because you were trying to keep up with everybody else and train. And I'm a pro baseball player, yada, 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 yada. I get it. But now you're broke, no education, nothing to fall back on. You're 22 years old. Like, this is the prime of your life, prime of your career. And now you are a ex baseball player. And now these kids are lost instead of, I'm all for kids going to college. Like, I'm all for it. Like, I think you should go to college and see what you could be stepping into if you went to pro ball, because some of these kids go from high school to pro ball, and it's such a big gap that they have to fill.
Well, think about it. Most of those kids that are going from high school into pro ball are going into rookie league or summer league. And where are those kids coming from? They're international kids that have been playing 27 hours a day, 9 days a week since they've been born. Like, that's the level. So you're going from a kid that's a spoiled brat that has every glove on the planet and can't use them well and is dominating that guy in high school. And then all of a sudden you're put up against a dude from the Dominican that's throwing 97. The ball moves 3 feet and he's talking trash to you. And you're going to break down because you've been facing a guy throwing 81 with one secondary pitch, and you're using an aluminum bat on a field that's probably 300 feet around. I mean, it's a rude awakening. So, I mean, I'm looking right now as you're talking at the Baseball America, or I'm sorry, the Baseball Almanac MLB draft history thing. And I'm going through it. I'm just clicking random years of the draft, and I'm seeing that the first round, a lot of those guys are highlighted as having major league careers. But then as you get into round 6, 7 and below, like, it's rarely, there's not a lot of guys highlighted. And then I've randomly seen 2000, 2012, like, there's 2 guys towards the bottom of the draft that have made it to the big leagues. One guy was drafted last in 2012, made it to the big leagues. 2000, dude was drafted almost last, made it to the big leagues. But there's, how many guys were drafted?
What percentage?
Well,
what
I'm looking.
percentage?
1,400 guys are drafted in the 2020 draft. 1,452. The 1,451st guy made it to the big leagues. The 1,439th guy made it to the big leagues. David Murphy, and he played like 10 years. And then you got random guys, but there's nothing there. These guys that are making it to the big leagues from these low, like James Shields. Like James Shields is good. Mike Napoli, good. Rich Harden, good. Like these guys are getting drafted low. Probably Fred Lewis. These guys are getting drafted low probably because, dude,
they're college guys.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. These guys are getting drafted low because they're a little bit older probably. And, they've got some potential. Or like this dude that was drafted last. Oh, he wasn't. He was out of a community college. The second to last pick, made it to the big leagues as a third baseman. So it's like, even if you are getting drafted last, it's not a sympathy pick. Dude, just for some reason we forgot about this guy. Did you see this guy? Like, that's the point, is like these kids are not, a lot of these players are getting drafted because they've got to fill a spot. They've got to fill a draft pick. So you're forcing teams.
They have to build
money. Mm-hmm.
They have to build a team for their first round pick to play with. You got to build a team for your. So I'm drafting a shortstop. Okay, in the first round. Like, guess what? I got to go draft a first baseman, a second baseman, a third baseman, because this guy's got to have somebody to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are delusional about that fact. And yes, every time you have an opportunity, like every time you put a jersey on, you have an opportunity to showcase yourself, showcase your talents, and catch somebody's eye and make it to the big leagues. I'm not taking that away from anybody. I don't care if you get drafted in the first overall pick or you get drafted in the last pick of the 40th round. It does not matter. If you have a jersey on, you have an opportunity. Yes, the hurdles are bigger the lower rounds you go. Yes,
they don't care about you as much. They don't think that
you can't take a day off.
Right.
You can't take a day off, where a first rounder, second rounder, third rounder that's got a little money behind him, he can hit 240, 250 or whatever, and he can keep getting bumped up. But if you're a 40th rounder, like, you got to bring it. You got to
be hitting.
You got to hit 300 every year. Like every
Flawless
day you go
defense.
0 for 4. Every day you go 0 for 4, they're thinking, is this the guy is this our guy? Is this the guy we want?
You're looking over your shoulder, waiting for that text to come into the clubhouse early.
No doubt about it.
I'm over here looking for my phone. It's on IG Live right in front of my face.
There you go.
There it is right there. It's too early, bro. I'm out of coffee.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just
an
interesting. This could be an interesting topic to talk about. I think that nowhere in other professional sports. So, if you're looking at baseball, okay, and you're looking at first rounders out of baseball, right? Mm-hmm. I dare say, and you probably have it pulled up on Baseball Almanac, that the range of first rounders that make it to the big leagues is like probably 66% ish.
Looks like more than
I would say more than that.
Looks like, I mean, just this one that I have pulled up right now, out of 39 picks, you're looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 did not make it to the big leagues. That's the 2013 draft. 12 out of the first 40 did not make it to the big leagues in the first round.
Right. So that's roughly 70% make it. So 30% don't. In what other sport, NFL, NBA, does your first rounder, NFL, NBA, I don't know anything about hockey, but they don't play in the NBA or NFL. That's unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
If your first rounder doesn't spend one day in the NFL or the NBA, like what?
It's a
I don't think
waste.
I've ever seen that.
It's a
I don't think I've ever seen that. So baseball is so different than every other sport, and people like they don't like. I would rather, for me as a baseball fan, okay, I would rather see a guy get drafted and be Strasburg, Harper, something like that, and spend 1-2 years in the minor leagues, and then I see him in the big leagues. That's it. Like some of these first round draft picks, like it takes, if you're out of high school, you're taking 5, 6, 7 years. People don't even know who you are until you get there. Like that's where baseball is missing the boat. And I think they're trying to revitalize their image. I think it plays better if you have 5 rounds of a draft. It makes everybody better. It makes scouting departments better. It makes high school players better. It makes college players better. It makes college programs better. It makes minor league baseball better. Like
it definitely does, because if you think about it, all those guys that, I mean, I know we just covered this, but all those guys that get drafted and go into these minor league teams, you were touching on a first rounder hitting 240 for a couple years. I mean, I'm looking at Ryan Stanek, drafted by the Rays, 2013, first round, 29th pick. His signing bonus was $1.7 million, right? So this dude was drafted in the first round, 2013, was in the big leagues 4 years later, and then dominating the next year, 2018. Like he's been a legit pitcher the past 2 years, 59 games in 2018 for the Rays, and then 63 games for the Rays and Marlins last year, throwing 76 innings. Dude's good, but that's the point. You think about all of these guys that aren't hitting 300 as a 30th round pick, right?
they're gone.
They're only on the team in the minor leagues because they have to have the team and they need somebody to fill that roster spot, not because they want this guy to get to the big leagues. Obviously, if the dude gets to the big leagues, great, and they're gonna welcome him with open arms. But they're not pouring in like a first rounder that drops down to single A because he's struggling with something. They're gonna pour all the attention into him. They're gonna let him start. They're not gonna worry about who wins or loses the game. They're going to make sure he gets his innings. They're going to make sure he gets his batters and his pitches because he's a first rounder or a second rounder or a fifth rounder. But you drop down to the 20th round and this guy is struggling at double A because he's busted his butt for 4 or 5 years to get to double A. And now he's struggling and he's hit a wall. He's hit, not a wall. He's hit an obstacle, right? Now he's got to go back to single A to refine his stuff. But if he doesn't do well, it's like, we don't have money in that. We signed you for $20,000. Like I can go sign somebody else for $20,000. So you're right. This helps all of baseball because now all those guys that are sitting in the minor leagues when I'm working for the Braden and Marauders and I'm seeing these guys that are here year after year are coming back and like fringe players, those guys could have stayed 3 years in college or they could have not got drafted out of high school and gotten better. And now at the same point, they're starting from zero where they're at right now, instead of having 4 years in. And once you're 4 years in, guess what you have now? You have statistical history at the professional level. It's not about, I know baseball is not what have you done? It's what are you doing for me right now? What have you done for me lately? What can you do? Not, oh, you went 4 for 4 last 2 games ago or whatever, but what are you went 0 for 4 today, right? So it's not about it. If you have those 3-4 years of stats and you're not doing well, it's playing against you. But if you go to college or you stay in college or you go from high school to college and you put up, so numbers, it's okay because it's an adjustment period going from high school to now you've whittled down. Just like we're talking about in professional baseball, you're whittling down as you go up in those levels. You're whittling down from high school to college. So now instead of facing a kid that's throwing 81 with one secondary pitch, picking his butt in right field with an aluminum bat. Now you're at college where it's D1, guys are throwing mid-90s, firm, working out. Now you have to make an adjustment. If you suck your first year, okay, but the college has a lot more invested in you than a minor league team does. A college is trying to win. College doesn't care if you go 4 for 4, 0 for 4. If you win that game for them, that's what they want because they're trying to keep their jobs. Of course, they're going to have guys that they want to perform well so they can get drafted and look good, but you have a better chance of sucking, going to college, sticking around, getting better, then get drafted higher, and then making your way up into professional baseball. That's the reality of it, because an 18-year-old kid, me as an 18-year-old going to the not the Dominican Summer League, the Summer League in Florida, the Gulf Coast League, no shot.
Yeah, well, I think too, what people really have to understand, and what I think we really want to relay to a lot of people out there, is the minor leagues is about development. So just like you were hitting on, like, you might be hitting 300 in low A and get released, and there's a guy who, and you were a 20th round guy, but there's a guy who hit 260 who was a third round pick who's still there and still gonna be there. Like it's and that's what we hear. Oh, well, I did better than this guy. Yeah, but there's so much more that goes into it. So there's one other topic that I want to briefly touch on and get your thoughts on before we wrap up. Do you think that this starts to like load up minor league teams? Because now I'm the New York Yankees, and before, so if me and you were in the draft and there was 40 rounds, like if you went in the 10th round to the Cardinals and I was like your college teammate and I was doing well, and I went in the 15th round to the Braves, like you don't have a choice, right? But now what if a team's like, well, hey, Joel, we want to draft you. Your buddy is not going to be in these first 5 rounds, but we're going to get you in these first 5 rounds. Do you think you can talk to him and have him sign with us? Because it's free game now. Everybody's a free agent. So now you're not pinned to a team. So now it's like, okay, like, yeah, okay, the Braves, the Astros, the Giants, the Dodgers, the Yankees are all offering me 20,000. Like, I got my free pick. Like, I can go to whatever team I want. I can sit there and evaluate, like, okay, like I'm a catcher, right? So you just drafted 3 catchers in the first 3 rounds for the past 3 years. Like, I'm not going to your organization. Like, I'm going to go to an organization that I can flourish in. And I think if guys think about this, like, minor league baseball is going to be crazy, because now you're just stacking friends.
What was your question that you had for me?
Do you think that this is going to change the way like kids sign with teams? Like if I go to if you take a kid from Vanderbilt, like, and he's best buddies because he played on Team USA with XYZ guy, like you could stack your minor league system because of relationships and friendships where you couldn't when there was 40 rounds.
I think you bring up an interesting point, because this almost makes it like the international draft, because that's a really good point, because now you're putting the power into the athlete. Because think about Joe Burrow. Everybody says, tell the Bengals that you're not going to sign. And he's like, I don't care. I'm getting drafted. Okay. That's cool. I don't mind it. But think about it. Exactly what you just said. You're a catcher, and they just drafted the dude from Vanderbilt. What was his name? Adley. A couple years ago.
Yeah.
It was last year. Stud. So like
Rushman.
Rushman. You're not passing him up. If you're getting drafted, if you're getting signed as a free agent, you're not passing up a draft pick, right? So you can almost think of it in terms of they're eliminating 40 minor league teams. There's still independent professional baseball. There's still minor league baseball. You've got 40 teams of 20, let's just say 30 guys. That's 1,200 players. That's 1,200 players that aren't going to get drafted, but they're free agents and they're looking for a contract. They have experience, right? So it's going to be that much more difficult. You might say, okay, I really do want to go to college now, but I like this idea that you bring up of it helps. Baseball is such a, if you have a bad clubhouse, it's tough to win. If you have poor team chemistry, it's tough to win. If you have good team chemistry and you have a sucky team, it's fun because you can do things. You're not going to have a sucky team in the big leagues. Everybody's in the big leagues because they're good. There's no, like, I know you picked the Orioles and I know the Marlins suck, but they're really good. They just are poorly meshed. They're poorly gelled together. They don't have
depth and experience.
They don't have depth and experience
Right.
and have the camaraderie. It's not like they're not good. So the point that I'm getting to is that when you say they just drafted a kid in the first 5 rounds and now all of a sudden he says, dude, I've been playing with this guy for 4 years. He's legit. He's steady. Offer him some money. He'll come in. He might not make it to the big leagues, but he's going to be somebody that I can throw to in a game that's going to command me well and make me look better. It's going to make your pitchers look better. He might not get to the big leagues, but that is actually a really good point because now someone else has the purpose of say you're a legit pitcher, right? I'm a catcher. Okay. You get drafted. I don't get drafted. And you're like, dude, Joel caught me every single game. He knows what I like to throw. You guys need to offer him some money. Let him follow me a little bit. I think he can help, whatever. Now, all of a sudden, I have a role of I'm making you better. I'm having a great time because I'm playing professional baseball. I'm making you better. I'm making the other pitchers on the staff better. Now, all of a sudden, I'm helping a team building process. Maybe for me, I wouldn't get to the big leagues, but I'm working on general manager skills. I'm working on managing skills. I'm working on coaching skills. I'm working on a pitching coach job. I'm working on all these different skills that I maybe would not have had the opportunity to gain that experience if I wouldn't have done that. So I think that is a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it. So the top 5 rounds, right? If we just go 30 teams drafting 5 rounds, that's 150 players, right? So the top 150 players in the country are going to get drafted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the next
it's the real top 150 players,
but the next 30 players. So player 151 to 180 in the country is now free game. So instead of, like, if you're getting drafted in the 6th round of the Major League Draft, whether you're in college or high school, like, you're pretty damn good player. You know what I mean? So now, instead of each team getting to pick a 6th round draft pick, now that's free game. So the San Francisco Giants could go out and draft 5 rounds and then get 30 6th-round draft picks. Like, that's the crazy part. And I think that's going to be the real interesting part, and see how players now use this as leverage to say, like, I have options. Like, I don't, like, especially if you have a lot of teams.
So is that signing bonus just a suggested amount? Is that the max that they can
That's
offer?
the max they can get. The max that any team can, and that's not defined yet. So it might be you can only offer so many, like, you have a draft pool of money. But
I was just saying in terms of a player negotiating and saying, well, I've got these 3 teams that want to offer me X amount, but if
no, it's max 20.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. If you have the Dodgers, the Braves, the Yankees, the Giants all offering you 20 grand, you've got your pick of choices.
Like, whereas before, if you're drafted in the 6th round by the Pirates, have fun.
Right. Yeah, good luck. You're gonna go, but that's what I mean. Is like, so if you get drafted by the Angels in the top 5 rounds, and then I don't, but I'm a 6th round prospect type, and I have the Padres and the Angels and the Dodgers all offer me 20 grand, I'm like, yo, I'm signing with the Angels because my boy's with the Angels. Like, I'm gonna go kick it with him. Like, why am I gonna go to the Dodgers or the Padres when I don't know anybody? Like, there's comfort in that. So to me, it's just very interesting. I think it's I can't wait to see how it plays out. I think it was a good topic and a good discussion for us to hit on. And for, episode 3 of the Cup of Coffee podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody who's watching live on Facebook Live and on YouTube and on our Instagram Live. We're live on Instagram. You can catch us every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you don't already, make sure you follow us on all social channels at Prospect Dugout. You can also listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you like the content that we are bringing to you, make sure you leave a comment, ask a question, like, share, all that good stuff. And if you're interested, if you're watching and you're interested in this hoodie, make sure you go check out the dugout.store. You can cop all of our Prospect Dugout merchandise, including this beanie. So hopefully you guys tune in tomorrow night, kicking it with your boy Swish.
Oh, baby. That's going to be legit. We got a good lineup for that. Got some legit players.
So make sure you check it out. Live on Facebook.com/Prospect Dugout and on YouTube. For episode 3 of the Cup of Coffee podcast, I am your host, Craig Maddox. For my partner in crime, Joel Hartman, we will see you on the next episode.
Peace out, guys. Peace out.